My name is Alexandra Pierce. I'm 32 years old, and the moment that shattered my life didn't happen in a dark alley or a stranger's bed. It happened in my own house, behind a bathroom door I'd unlocked 1,000 times without fear. I came home early that evening, my heels still in my hand, my head buzzing with the excitement of surprising my fiancé. I remember smiling as I pushed the door open, already rehearsing the joke I'd make about him skipping work. Then I heard the water running upstairs, the shower, and a laugh, a woman's laugh, sauced, familiar. When I opened the bathroom door, steam rolled out like a living thing, and through the fog, I saw two silhouettes pressed together behind the glass. My fiancé's voice whispered my sister's name, not mine, hers. If you're listening to this and you think you know where it's going, stay with me, because the truth is uglier than you expect. And before we go any further, if you've ever been betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, hit the like button, subscribe, and share this story. It helps more people hear it, and maybe it helps someone feel less alone. I didn't scream. That's the part people always ask about. They expect a dramatic reaction, glass shattering, tears, something cinematic. What actually happened was quieter. My body went cold, like my blood had been replaced with ice water. The bathroom mirror fogged over, and I watched their blurred shapes move together while my reflection stared back at me, pale and unrecognizable. My hand was still on the doorknob. I remember thinking, very calmly, if I let go, this becomes real. The water kept running. My sister laughed again. And then my fiancé said something that I will never forget. He said, "Alexandra won't be home for hours." That's when I let go of the door and stepped backward into the hallway, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might tear through my chest. I don't know how long I stood there. Time does strange things when your reality collapses. Eventually, I found myself sitting at the top of the stairs, my back against the wall, trying to breathe quietly so they wouldn't hear me. I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from making a sound. In that moment, what hurt wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a drunken mistake or a single bad choice. This was planned, comfortable, familiar. To understand how I ended up there, frozen in my own house while my sister and fiancé showered together, you need to know where I come from. I grew up believing family was everything. My parents raised us in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind with trimmed hedges and Sunday dinners that everyone pretended were perfect. I was the older sister, the responsible one, the girl who followed rules and cleaned up messes. My younger sister, Emily, was different. She was magnetic, the kind of girl who didn't try to be charming but somehow always was. Teachers adored her, boys noticed her. Even as kids, people gravitated toward her like she carried her own light. I learned early that love in our house was not evenly distributed. My parents never said it out loud, but it was in the small things. Emily's mistakes were brushed off as phases. Mine were disappointing. If she cried, someone rushed to comfort her. If I did, I was told to be strong. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I didn't resent her. I told myself I was imagining it. That was my first mistake. By the time I met Daniel, I thought I had outgrown all of that. Daniel was steady, calm, reliable. He made me feel chosen in a way I never had before. When he proposed on a quiet weekend trip with no audience, I cried so hard I could barely say yes. He said he loved how grounded I was, how thoughtful, how different I was from people who needed constant attention. I took that as a compliment. I didn't realize it was also a warning. Emily adored Daniel from the start. At least, that's what I told myself. She hugged him too long, texted him too often, complimented him in ways that made me uncomfortable. Whenever I mentioned it, she laughed and said I was being paranoid. Daniel told me I was imagining things, that Emily was just friendly, that I needed to work on my insecurity. I wanted to be the cool fiancé, the trusting partner. So I swallowed my instincts. I ignored the tight feeling in my chest. I convinced myself that love meant doubt was a flaw, not a signal. As the wedding approached, things shifted. Subtle at first. Daniel started working late more often. Emily began stopping by unannounced. They shared inside jokes I wasn't part of. When I entered a room, conversations stopped. If I asked questions, I was told I was stressed, overwhelmed, emotional. Wedding planning will do that to you, they said. I started to feel like a guest in my own life, hovering at the edges while something important happened without me. The day I came home early, I wasn't supposed to. A meeting had been canceled at the last minute, and I thought fate was handing me a small gift. I imagined surprising Daniel with takeout from his favorite place, maybe sitting on the couch together like we used to. Instead, fate handed me the truth. As I sat on the stairs, listening to the shower continue, memories crashed into me all at once. The time I caught Emily wearing my engagement ring just to see how it felt. The night Daniel defended her when she insulted me, saying I was too sensitive. The way my parents always took her side when she crossed boundaries. It was like my entire life rearranged itself in my mind, every moment snapping into a pattern I had refused to see. The bathroom door finally opened. I heard footsteps, voices muffled by towels and steam. Panic surged through me. I didn't know what to do, where to go, who I was in that moment. I crept down the stairs, every muscle screaming as if I were running from a predator. I grabbed my purse, my keys, and slipped out the front door without making a sound. Once I was in my car, parked half a block away, I broke. My hands shook so badly I couldn't start the engine. Tears came in violent waves, blurring my vision, choking me. I wanted to scream, to confront them, to demand explanations, but something deeper stopped me. A quiet, terrifying thought formed in my mind. What if this isn't the first time? I sat there until my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Hey love, where are you? Thought we have dinner together." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. Then another notification popped up. This one wasn't meant for me. It was a preview of a message Emily sent to Daniel, accidentally displayed on my phone because we shared a family group chat. It read, "She almost caught us today. We need to be more careful." My hands went numb as I realized something worse than betrayal was unfolding. They weren't just hiding from me, they were planning around me. And in that moment, sitting alone in my car, I understood that the wedding, my family, and the life I thought I was building were all built on lies. What I didn't know yet was how far those lies went, or how many people I loved were already choosing sides. When I eventually drove back, it was late enough that the house was dark. I parked a few doors down and walked slowly, every step heavy with dread. I didn't know if Emily was still there. I didn't know if I wanted her to be. When I opened the front door, the smell of Daniel's soap hit me immediately, sharp and clean and suddenly nauseating. He came into the hallway, concern painted across his face so convincingly I almost doubted myself. "Alex, thank God, I've been worried sick," he said, pulling me into a hug. His arms felt foreign, wrong. I didn't hug him back. I just stood there, stiff, letting him perform concern like an actor hitting his marks. "I needed to think," I said quietly. He pulled back, searching my face. "About what?" I looked at him and wondered how many times he'd looked at me while lying, how many times he'd kissed me after being with my sister. My voice stayed steady, even though my heart was screaming. "About us." Something flickered in his eyes. Fear? Guilt? It vanished quickly, replaced by softness. "You've been under so much stress," he said gently. "The wedding, work. Maybe we should slow things down." Slow things down. The phrase echoed ominously. Before I could respond, I noticed something on the counter behind him. A wine glass. Two of them, one still damp. Emily's favorite lipstick stain faintly visible on the rim. My gaze lingered there just a second too long. Daniel followed my eyes, then stepped slightly to block my view. "Emily stopped by earlier," he said casually. "She left a little while ago." Earlier. Left. Every word carefully chosen. My chest tightened. "How long was she here?" I asked. He shrugged. "Not long. She was upset about something. You know how she gets." I nodded slowly, pretending to accept the answer. Inside, something hardened, a decision forming quietly, like ice spreading across water. If they thought I was clueless, if they were already coordinating lies, then confronting them now would only make them better at hiding. I needed the truth. All of it. That night, I lay next to Daniel, staring at the ceiling while he slept soundly beside me. His breathing was even, peaceful. Mine was shallow, controlled. Every time he shifted, my body tensed. I thought about how easily he slept while my world burned. Around 2 a.m., his phone lit up on the nightstand. He didn't wake. I stared at it, my pulse roaring in my ears. I'd never gone through his phone before. I'd always believed trust meant restraint. I reached for it. The screen unlocked with a code I knew by heart. My birthday. Of course it was. My fingers trembled as I opened his messages. At first, nothing obvious. Work chats, group threads. Then I saw her name. Emily. The thread was long. Painfully long. Months long. I scrolled through messages I was never meant to see. Complaints about me. Jokes at my expense. Late-night confessions. Photos that made my vision blur. One message stood out, sent just days earlier. Emily had written, "After the wedding, we won't have to sneak anymore." Daniel replied, "I know. Just be patient. She trusts me." I felt something inside me break completely. Not shatter. Break. Clean and final. They weren't just betraying me emotionally. They were planning a future that erased me entirely. A wedding meant to legitimize their lie. A ceremony where I would smile in white while my sister stood beside me, knowing exactly what she was taking. I set the phone back exactly where it was and lay there until morning, staring into the dark. When dawn came, I felt strangely calm. The shock had settled into clarity. I knew now that this wasn't about confrontation or forgiveness. This was about survival, about reclaiming myself from people who saw me as an obstacle, not a person. As Daniel slept on, unaware that I now held the truth, my phone buzzed softly in my hand. A new message from my mother. "Emily says you've been distant lately. Did something happen between you two?" I closed my eyes, the weight of it all pressing down on me. They were already controlling the narrative, already preparing their defenses, and suddenly I realized the betrayal wasn't just between my fiancé and my sister. It was woven into my family, my past, my entire sense of belonging. I wasn't just losing a relationship. I was about to lose my place in my own family, and I had no idea how far they were willing to go to keep their secret buried. The next morning, I didn't speak. I didn't look Daniel in the eye as he poured coffee in the kitchen, humming the same tune he always did when everything was supposedly fine. I moved mechanically, picking up my mug, avoiding conversation. The apartment, which had always felt like a safe cocoon, now felt like a trap. Every laugh from him, every casual glance, felt calculated. I reminded myself to breathe, slowly, deliberately, but the tension in my chest refused to loosen. I needed space, not just physical space, but mental space, room to think, to unravel the web they had spun around me without panic clouding my judgment. I told Daniel I had errands to run, but I drove without a destination. My mind replayed the shower scene over and over. The shock, the disbelief, the surreal calm as I realized what was happening. I could still see them pressed together behind the glass, hear the laughter that had cut through my world like a blade. I tried to tell myself that maybe it had been a mistake, that emotions and proximity had gotten the better of them. But deep down, I knew better.
This wasn't spontaneous. This was deliberate. I ended up at the small cafe near my parents' house, the one I used to go to when I needed time to think as a teenager. Somehow, sitting there, sipping bitter coffee, I felt a flicker of old strength. Memories surfaced, my childhood, the way I had learned to navigate a family where love wasn't evenly distributed. Emily had always been the favored one, always. The youngest, the charming, the one who could say anything and escape unscathed. I realized that even now, decades later, nothing had changed. The dynamics hadn't shifted. I had only been too blind or too trusting to see it. While I sat there, my phone buzzed again. A text from my friend Marissa. "Hey, you've been MIA. Want to meet up?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to curl up and pretend the betrayal hadn't happened. Another part, the stronger part, knew I needed allies. I replied, asking to meet immediately. Marissa had been my best friend since college, the one person I trusted beyond my family. If anyone could help me navigate this, it was her. We met at a small park near her apartment. I didn't even have the energy to hug her. I just sat down on the bench, my hands wrapped around my coffee cup like it could anchor me. She studied me carefully. "Alex, you look exhausted. What happened?" Her voice was soft, but there was an edge of worry. I didn't hold back. I told her everything. Every detail, the shower, the messages, the months of deceit I had just discovered. The confession poured out of me in a torrent, each word cutting away at the numbness, revealing the raw ache beneath. Marissa's face went pale. "Alex, oh my God, are you okay?" I shook my head. "No, but I have to be. I can't just sit there and let them destroy everything I've built, everything I am." She took my hand. "You're stronger than you realize, and you're not alone in this. We'll figure it out." Her words gave me a flicker of hope, but it was fragile, like a candle in the wind, because hope, right now, felt dangerous. After our meeting, I decided to confront my parents, not yet about Emily and Daniel, not yet with full fury, but to test the waters, to see where their loyalties truly lay. I went to their house under the guise of Sunday brunch, keeping my expression neutral, even as my chest tightened with anxiety. My mother greeted me with her usual warmth, but I could see the slightest tension in her eyes. My father's smile was tight, almost rehearsed. Over eggs and toast, I asked casually about Emily. "How's she doing?" "Fine," my mother said, but there was something in the way she said it, too quick, too sharp. "Busy, like always," my father added, avoiding eye contact. I watched them carefully, searching for cracks, for signs of honesty, but they were practiced. Like Emily, like Daniel, the web of deception extended further than I imagined.
Later, while they were distracted, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the texts again. One in particular caught my eye. Emily to Daniel. "I don't want her to suspect anything. We need to make this seamless." My stomach turned. They weren't just betraying me emotionally. They were orchestrating a plan to erase me, to make my life a facade while they enjoyed whatever twisted satisfaction they got from this. That afternoon, I drove home in silence, plotting my next move. I knew confrontation wasn't enough. Not yet. I needed evidence. I needed clarity. And, most importantly, I needed to protect myself from further manipulation. When I arrived at the apartment, the door was slightly ajar. Panic gripped me. I had locked it before leaving. Heart racing, I stepped inside. Everything seemed normal at first, the living room tidy, the faint smell of Daniel's cologne lingering, but then I noticed something on the couch. A small envelope, sealed and addressed to me, in Daniel's handwriting. I froze. Slowly, I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper with a short message. "Alex, you're smarter than I thought. Let's talk, alone. D." My hands shook. My chest tightened.
I didn't know if I should read it as an apology, a trap, or a challenge, but one thing was certain. The story was far from over, and I had no idea just how deep the betrayal ran or how many secrets were still waiting to surface. The envelope fell from my hands, sliding to the floor, as a chilling thought settled over me. If this is only the beginning, what comes next could destroy everything and everyone I love. I didn't touch the envelope for hours. I just sat on the edge of the couch staring at it, my mind racing. Daniel's words felt like a dare, a warning, and a confession all at once. I knew that opening that door meant stepping into the lion's den, but I also knew I couldn't sit still any longer. I had to face him, even if it broke me further. By evening, I summoned the courage to go upstairs and knock on his steady door. The sound echoed unnaturally in the apartment, and I heard him pause inside. His voice called out, calm and familiar. "Alex, come in." I entered, trying to keep my expression neutral, though inside I was a hurricane of anger, fear, and grief. Daniel was sitting at his desk, hands folded, a faint smile on his lips that made my stomach twist. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit, we need to talk." I did, though every instinct screamed to flee. He leaned back, watching me like a cat observing a cornered bird. He said finally, "I know you found out." My heart froze, my pulse hammered. I forced myself to stay calm. "Found out what?" I asked, though I already knew. "The truth," he said smoothly, "about Emily and me. I didn't want you to discover it this way." His tone was disturbingly measured. Not guilt, not remorse, just control. I wanted to scream, to throw the envelope at him, to rip him apart with words, but instead I asked carefully, deliberately, "How long?" He hesitated, just a fraction too long. "Months," he admitted. "But it's complicated, Alex. You wouldn't understand." I did understand. I understood perfectly, and the realization hit harder than anything I had imagined. The betrayal wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a lapse, it was a deliberate choice. They had plotted around me, manipulated me, and lied to my face for months. "You said I wouldn't understand," I said, voice trembling but sharp. "Explain it, right now, or I leave and you never see me again." He sighed, leaning forward. "Emily and I, we've always had a connection. You and I, we were comfortable, predictable. You're amazing, Alex, but predictable. I needed someone more alive, someone who excites me. That's Emily."
A laugh escaped me, bitter and hollow. Alive? You call sleeping with my sister alive? You call betraying me alive? You've made a circus of my life while I trusted you, Daniel. You've lied to my face while I loved you." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he studied me, as if trying to measure the exact amount of anger he could provoke before I broke. "I didn't want to hurt you," he finally said. "I tried to be careful, but feelings, they can't be controlled. You have to understand that." "No," I whispered. "I understand perfectly. You wanted me to be blind, to be fooled. That's what you wanted." The words felt like ice, slicing through the lingering warmth I had for him. And then I asked the question that had been burning in me since that shower. "Did Emily plan this, or was this your idea?" He hesitated again. "We both wanted it. It wasn't a plan against you, not really. It happened." I laughed again, louder this time. "Happened? Do you hear yourself? I walked in on you, Daniel. This didn't just happen. You chose this. Together." He looked down, silence stretching between us. Finally, he said softly, "Yes, together." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt dizzy, nauseous, like the floor beneath me had vanished. My sister, my fiancé, both people I had loved, trusted, and relied on, both had conspired to rewrite my life without my knowledge. I left the room without another word, my mind already racing with the steps I needed to take. The confrontation had given me clarity, but it also opened a dangerous new layer. They were calculating, manipulative, and fearless, and now they knew I had discovered the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, thinking through every betrayal, every small manipulation that had gone unnoticed. I remembered Emily's childhood antics, how she had always been able to charm her way out of punishment, how she had always made my victories feel hollow. And Daniel? He had always been so calm, so steady, so trustworthy. That calmness had been a mask. By morning, I had a plan. Not revenge, at least not yet. First, I needed evidence. I needed to know how deep this went, how many lies had been constructed around me. I started by revisiting every message, every email, every social media interaction that could give me a hint. And slowly, piece by piece, a pattern emerged. Emily had been texting Daniel for over a year before the engagement. Every time I brought up concerns, she laughed it off. My parents had always sided with her in subtle ways, giving excuses for her behavior, dismissing mine. It wasn't just the affair. It was a lifetime of manipulation, grooming me to trust the wrong people while they built their secret world. The realization was terrifying, but also empowering. I wasn't just a victim. I was a woman who now had the truth in her hands, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something stir inside me that wasn't fear. It was resolve. I knew the next steps would be dangerous: confrontations, exposure, reclaiming my life. It would all be messy, painful, but I also knew I couldn't turn back. Not now, not after everything I had discovered. As I gathered my notes, screenshots, and texts into a folder on my laptop, my phone buzzed again. A message from Emily. Simply, "We need to talk, now." And in that moment, I realized this was no longer about betrayal alone. It was a test, a battle, a reckoning, and I wasn't going to run. The morning after Emily's cryptic message, I woke with a sense of grim determination. I had spent the night mapping everything out: the messages, the lies, the betrayals. But now it was time to move from observation to action. No more silence, no more pretending I could ignore what had happened. If I was going to survive this, I had to be smart, deliberate, and unyielding. I started with Daniel. He was already awake when I came down to the kitchen, the smell of coffee filling the apartment, his casual morning smile in place like nothing had changed. I didn't answer his good morning greeting. I poured a cup of coffee, took a deliberate sip, and watched him. Every movement, every blink, every hesitant glance told me he was waiting for me to break. He had no idea that I wasn't the same woman who had walked out of that shower confrontation, stunned and broken. "Alex," he said finally, his voice calm but wary, "we need to talk about last night." I set my mug down slowly, letting the clink on the counter emphasize the weight of my presence. "We do," I said, my tone steady. "But I'm not talking about feelings or excuses. I want the truth, all of it, and I want it now." He hesitated, then sank into the chair across from me. "Alex, I told you everything I could." "No," I interrupted sharply. "You didn't. I have messages, emails, every interaction you've tried to hide. Don't lie to me again. I want the full story. How long? What else? Who else knows?" For a moment, he said nothing. Then, with a heavy sigh, he began. He admitted that the affair with Emily had started a year before our engagement, that they had planned moments to be alone, coordinated lies, manipulated everyone around us, including my parents. He even confessed that they had discussed delaying the wedding only to maximize their advantage, to make it look like I was the one who had been inattentive or overly stressed. I listened, numb, shaking with fury and heartbreak, but also with a growing clarity. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal, it was the realization of how calculated it had been. They hadn't stumbled into it, they had plotted every detail. Every casual glance, every smile, every innocent visit from Emily had been part of a pattern.
By mid-morning, I decided to confront Emily directly. I needed to hear her version, not to forgive, not to reconcile, but to understand the depth of the deception. She had sent me a message, "We need to talk, now." That now made it clear she expected compliance, and I intended to give her exactly that, but on my terms. I met her at a small, neutral cafe downtown. When I arrived, she was already there, sipping coffee and scrolling on her phone, looking calm, collected, as if she hadn't spent the last year dismantling my trust. Her smile faltered slightly when she saw me. "Alex, hey," she said softly. I didn't respond. I slid into the seat across from her and leaned forward, my hands folded on the table. "Emily, don't try to charm me. Don't try to justify anything. I want the truth, all of it, and I want it now." Her eyes flickered, a shadow of guilt, but she quickly masked it with her usual poise. "Alex, it's not like that. I didn't mean to hurt you. Daniel and it happened. We can't help who we feel for." I laughed, hollow and sharp. "It happened? You've been manipulating me, lying to me, and planning behind my back for over a year, and you call it happened? Do you have any idea what that means? To find out that your sister and your fiancé have been orchestrating a life around your ignorance?" She shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know how to stop. I didn't know what to do without hurting anyone." I felt a surge of anger so intense it made my vision blur. "Hurt anyone? You've hurt me in ways you can't even imagine. Every trust I had, every moment of my life, you invaded it, you planned it, and now you want sympathy?" Her eyes filled with tears, but they were calculated, rehearsed. I had seen them before, in childhood, when she wanted something from someone and knew exactly how to manipulate them. The realization hit me like a cold wave. I had spent my entire life trying to be the bigger person, the responsible one, the peacemaker, and she had always been preparing to take advantage of it. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Emily, understand this. I'm not here to cry, beg, or plead. I'm here to reclaim my life, and you are not a part of that anymore." She gasped, a flash of fear breaking through her carefully constructed facade. "Alex, don't do this, please. You're overreacting. You think this will ruin everything, but—" I cut her off. "No, I know what I'm doing, and I've already started. Every message, every lie, every little plan you thought you had in place, I see it now, and I'm not afraid to use the truth." Emily's face went pale. For the first time, I saw real fear. Not the superficial kind she usually wore, but real, raw fear. And for the first time, I felt a surge of empowerment that was intoxicating. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the storm they hadn't seen coming. We left the cafe in tense silence. The next steps were clear. I would gather evidence, confront the others, and establish boundaries that they couldn't manipulate or erase. Daniel and Emily had underestimated me. They had underestimated the woman who had spent decades learning to navigate deception, betrayal, and favoritism. And they were about to find out, in the most personal, irreversible way, that Alexandra Pierce was not someone you could break and leave behind. As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed again. This time, an anonymous number. "Stop digging, Alex. Some truths are better left buried." A shiver ran down my spine. Whoever had sent this knew what I was doing, knew the storm I was unleashing. And suddenly, the betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was dangerous.
I sat in my car for a long time after reading that message. "Stop digging, Alex." The words felt heavier than any insult Daniel or Emily had ever thrown at me. This wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore. This was intimidation. Someone was scared. And that realization changed everything. I didn't reply. Silence can be a weapon when used correctly. Instead, I took a screenshot and saved it to the growing folder on my laptop labeled, very deliberately, Truth. The folder had become my anchor. Every message, every screenshot, every date and timestamp was proof that I wasn't imagining things, that I wasn't too sensitive or overreacting like they'd always said. Facts don't gaslight you. That night, I didn't sleep at the apartment. I packed a small bag while Daniel was out running errands and drove straight to Marissa's place. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into a hug and let me cry into her shoulder like I hadn't allowed myself to cry in weeks. The kind of crying that empties you out, that leaves you hollow but strangely lighter. Over tea at her kitchen table, I showed her everything. The shower discovery, the messages, the wedding plans they'd been making behind my back, and finally, the anonymous threat. Marissa's jaw tightened as she scrolled. Alex, this is bad, but it's also clear. You're not crazy. They're scared because you're seeing the pattern. That word, pattern, stuck with me, because once you see one, you can't unsee it. The next few days became a blur of quiet investigation. I called vendors under the pretense of confirming details and learned that Daniel had made changes without telling me. Seating arrangements, guest lists, even the honeymoon booking. Emily's name appeared in places it had no business being. I felt sick, but I also felt vindicated. This wasn't just betrayal of the heart. This was a calculated erasure. Then came the hardest part. My parents. I asked them to meet me for dinner, neutral ground, a small restaurant we'd been going to for years. My mother smiled when she saw me, relief in her eyes. My father squeezed my hand and said, "You've been distant lately." The understatement almost made me laugh. Halfway through the meal, I set my phone on the table and slid it toward them. "I need you to read something." They exchanged a glance before my mother picked it up. As she scrolled, her expression shifted from confusion to discomfort to denial. "Alexandra," she said finally, lowering the phone, "this could be taken out of context." There it was, the reflex, the shield. "Out of context?" I asked quietly. "Mom, I walked in on them together. I have months of messages, plans, lies. How much context do you need?" My father cleared his throat. "Emily has always been emotional. Maybe Daniel led her on." I felt something inside me snap. Not loudly, not violently, just cleanly. "No," I said, "you don't get to rewrite this. Not anymore. They did this together. And what hurts just as much is realizing how quickly you're willing to excuse it." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We don't want to lose either of you." "I understand. But by refusing to hold her accountable, you've already chosen." Silence fell over the table, thick and uncomfortable. In that moment, I saw my parents clearly, not as villains, but as flawed people who valued peace over truth, comfort over justice. And I realized something painful but necessary. Healing sometimes requires distance, even from the people you raised. The pressure escalated after that. Daniel left voicemails, swinging wildly between apologies and subtle threats. Emily sent long messages filled with blame disguised as vulnerability. "You're ruining everything. We didn't mean for it to go this far. Why can't you just let this go?" Let it go. As if my life were a coat I could simply shrug off. The anonymous messages continued. Different numbers, same tone. Warning me, urging me to stay quiet. One night, as I lay awake on Marissa's couch, my phone buzzed again. This time it read, "You think people will believe you. You've always been the difficult one." That one hurt more than the rest, because it echoed my childhood, the unspoken label I'd carried for years, the responsible one, the sensitive one, the difficult one. And that's when it hit me. They weren't just afraid of the truth. They were afraid I would finally speak it. The next morning, I did something that terrified me and empowered me at the same time. I emailed my therapist. I booked an emergency session. For the first time, I didn't minimize or soften my story. I said the words out loud. My fiancé and my sister are having an affair, and my family is protecting them. Saying it didn't destroy me like I thought it would. It grounded me. By the end of that week, I had made my decision.
I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to expose everything in a dramatic explosion. I was going to be precise, strategic. I would end the engagement publicly, truthfully, and on my terms. No room for spin, no room for denial. As I closed my laptop that night, a calm settled over me, the kind that comes before a storm breaks. Daniel and Emily thought they were controlling the narrative. They thought silence meant weakness. They were wrong. And as I stared at the wedding date circled on my calendar, I whispered to myself, "You don't get to bury the truth anymore."
The morning of the confrontation, I woke with a strange sense of calm. Months of betrayal, manipulation, and lies had led to this moment. The apartment felt heavy with anticipation, the quiet before a storm. I had rehearsed every word, every reaction, every step I would take. There would be no hesitation, no tears of weakness, only truth, only control. Alexandra Pierce was no longer the naive woman who had walked in on a shower. She was a force, and everyone involved was about to learn that. I dressed deliberately, choosing clothes that gave me confidence without shouting it. No dramatic black, no overt show of anger. Just me, steady, composed, unyielding. I didn't want them to mistake theatrics for fear. I wanted my presence alone to communicate the storm I carried. I arrived at Daniel and Emily's apartment a few minutes before they expected me. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the surge of clarity and purpose. Every betrayal, every manipulation, every carefully hidden lie flashed through my mind. I wasn't just confronting an affair. I was confronting a pattern of deceit that had spanned years, stretching from my childhood through my adult life. Daniel opened the door, his smile faltering slightly when he saw my face. "Alex, what?" I stepped inside before he could finish, my voice cutting through the room like a knife. "Stop pretending, Daniel. Stop acting like nothing has happened. This ends today." Emily appeared behind him, eyes wide, lips pressed together. The mask she always wore, innocence, charm, entitlement, was cracking. I could see the first flickers of panic. "Alex, please," she began. I held up a hand. "No, you will not speak first. You've had months to manipulate, to justify, to gaslight me. I am done listening to lies. I am done pretending this is my fault." I laid the folder of evidence on the table. Screenshots, messages, emails, everything meticulously organized. Daniel leaned forward, reaching for it, but I moved the folder slightly out of reach. "This is the truth, and it's only a fraction of what you've tried to hide." Emily gasped, the sound sharp in the silent room. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. I continued. "You both thought I wouldn't see. You thought I would quietly ignore the signs, but I am not invisible. I am not weak. I am not the one who gets erased." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "Daniel, the engagement is over, effective immediately. You will not speak to me unless it is necessary. Emily, you will not contact me, my family, or anyone I care about. The lies end here." Emily opened her mouth as if to protest, but I raised a finger. "Do not speak. I have nothing left for you. The betrayal was not just the affair. It was the planning, the manipulation, the thoughtless destruction of trust. I will not allow you to gaslight me further. You have chosen your path. Now live with it." Daniel's face shifted from disbelief to anger to something closer to fear. For the first time, he understood that control had slipped from his hands. He opened his mouth, but the words faltered. Emily's usual confidence was gone, replaced by the panic of someone who had underestimated the woman they betrayed. I didn't linger. I picked up the folder and my purse, moving toward the door. I said, "This isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming my life."
and that is exactly what I intend to do. As I stepped out into the sunlight, the weight on my chest began to lift. The betrayal had been shattering, but the truth had freed me. I realized that forgiveness didn't have to come immediately, if ever. What mattered was boundaries, strength, and clarity. I had survived the worst of their deception. Now I could choose how to live moving forward. I walked to my car, feeling the power of control returning with every step. The storm inside me had not dissipated, it had been channeled into purpose. And as I started the engine, I realized something profound. I was done being anyone's victim. But even as I drove away, a thought lingered, a whisper of doubt and fear. They weren't finished. They might try to manipulate others, spin stories, or reclaim influence over my life. The world still held challenges I could not predict, and yet I felt ready, not because I wasn't afraid, but because I had finally seen clearly.
The weeks that followed were a mixture of chaos and liberation. Friends and a few family members who had always seen through Emily and Daniel's facade rallied around me. Marissa became my anchor, a constant reminder that I wasn't alone, that my feelings were valid, and that my life didn't have to be defined by betrayal. I started therapy, not just to process the shock, but to rebuild my boundaries, my self-worth, and my trust in my own judgment. I took control of the narrative publicly in a subtle but effective way. I canceled the wedding quietly, informing vendors and close friends with the truth I was willing to share, that the engagement had ended due to irreconcilable differences and dishonesty that I could no longer tolerate. I didn't shame Daniel or Emily publicly, but the truth hung in the air, undeniable to anyone paying attention. Their carefully constructed lives began to wobble. Slowly, I rebuilt my routine, focusing on myself in ways I hadn't in years. I enrolled in a workshop I had always wanted to attend, started running again, and spent time with people who truly valued me. Each small act felt like reclaiming a piece of the life they had tried to steal. I learned to recognize manipulation quickly, to say no without guilt, and to trust my instincts above all. One afternoon, as I sat on my balcony overlooking the city, I reflected on the journey. The betrayal had been painful, shattering, and humiliating, but it had also revealed something I had long forgotten: my own resilience. I realized that the storm they had created was nothing compared to the strength I had cultivated over decades of navigating life on my own terms. I didn't speak to Daniel or Emily after that. Their messages went unanswered. Their attempts at persuasion, guilt, or intimidation were met with silence. Silence became my shield, my weapon, and my statement. I had removed the people who poisoned my life from my daily reality, and in doing so, I reclaimed my peace. Healing wasn't instant, and some days were harder than others. Memories would resurface unbidden, and moments of doubt would creep in. But each day, I reminded myself I had faced the ultimate betrayal and survived. I had chosen clarity over confusion, strength over despair, and myself over everyone who had tried to undermine me. By the end of the year, I had started journaling regularly, capturing my thoughts, my growth, and my journey from heartbreak to empowerment. I even considered writing a book, an honest account of betrayal, resilience, and reclaiming one's life, because I realized that my story, painful as it had been, might help someone else find their voice. One evening, Marissa came over with 2 cups of tea. We sat in the living room, warm blankets around us, and she smiled. "You've come so far, Alex. I don't even recognize the woman from a few months ago." I smiled back, genuinely this time. I recognize her. She's still here, stronger, wiser, and finally free from all the people who thought they could control her.
And in that moment, I understood fully that the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the manipulation had not defeated me. They had revealed who I truly was, Alexandra Pierce, a woman who could endure, survive, and thrive no matter what. As I closed my journal that night, I whispered to myself, I am enough. I am worthy. I am free. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone betrayed your trust completely? How did you find your strength? Share your story in the comments.